Hey, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about something that is so important when it comes to your business, especially in that startup launch phase. So, first thing most people do is like, oh, I have this great idea and I want to sell it, or I have this new product, I want to sell it. And you just start blasting things out on social media, right? That happens a lot. And if that sounds familiar, it's okay. But really, what you want to do is make sure that you have your brand down pat. And so we want to talk today about branding. And I brought my friend in, Melissa Nagy, with Melissa Nagy Designs, because she loves doing branding and she is really, really good at it. She actually designed my logo that I absolutely love. So, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, first off, explain a little bit about how you got into branding and marketing and just a little bit about Melissa Nagy Designs.
Yep. A little over 20 years ago, I was in college and I was always freelancing graphic design. I went to school for visual communication design and got my degree in marketing. And I've always freelance side projects here and there. And then it was about 8, 9 years ago that I went from my full-time job that was administrative work and decided to take a part-time job in the creative world because I knew that's where my heart was. I was always doing it on the side, so I was finally ready to make that leap. And I did that for a couple of years and then COVID hit. And so once COVID hit, I got laid off from that job. And that's when I decided to really take my job full time. And at first, it was primarily graphic design and web design. Whatever people came to me for, I would design those pieces. And then I found myself gravitating more and more to branding pieces. And the entire piece of the puzzle that included their logo, their marketing pieces, business cards, flyers, and all of those items, and really helping to build the brand with their message, their colors, their fonts, and just so everything worked together. The whole message was there and everything was cohesive. And that's really how I kind of niched myself into this.
You do such a great job at it too. I love it. So, first off, what is branding? So, somebody might be listening that, like, what exactly does that even mean?
Mhm. Yeah, branding, as I was kind of saying, encompasses everything within your business, who you are. It kind of starts from your mission and vision statement. You have to really understand where you're headed as a business, where you want to go, where your end goal is, and you have to understand your target audience. And then once you have those pieces, you can really focus your messaging and your look and appeal around those items. So we often think about the different type of business, their company, their industry. We'll look at their competitors, what they're doing, and take that style where they want to go with that. And then we look at their audience. Where's their audience? How do we want to speak to them? How are we going to reach them? And we put all of those pieces together to get the whole brand identity.
Why is that even important? And I love that you're saying this, right? Because I know it's really important, but why is it important? I'm like
Yeah,
I'm like so
it's
excited. I'm
super.
like, "Oh, listen, like, you have to listen to this, guys."
Yes. If you want to get in front of your customers, it goes from customers, potential leads, current customers. It hits everybody, and it depends on where they're at in that buying funnel, so to speak. We can look at each of those pieces and see where you're at, so we can make sure your service or your product gets in front of the right people at the right time in order to turn them into a paying customer or even a referral. If you do a good job, you can get referrals from them. And it's just getting in front of them and actually closing the deal, whatever your goal is.
So, if somebody just started a business and they're like, "Okay, I'm starting from scratch, and yes, I need branding done. I don't have a logo, I just have a product or I just have a service." Where do you start with them?
Mhm. We discuss their business. Um, that's where I figure out who they are, what they want to do, their industry. I learn a little bit more about it. If it's an industry that I haven't worked into much. Um, and then we kind of go from there. Half of the time, my clients do know a general color or an image. Sometimes they have no idea and they're like, just make me something.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of an open book. And I'm just hoping that they'll like whatever I put together. So it's a lot of question answer at the beginning to make sure I'm going down the right path to begin with. And then a lot of my projects, I'll start off by giving 2 or 3 examples. Um, I'll put together the concepts, but I'll also pull things from the internet or I'll have them send me stuff that they're interested in or they like this style or they like this client but they don't know why. And so I'll put those pieces together and try to figure it out. It's kind of like a puzzle normally,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we always start with that logo too. And once we figure that out, then everything else builds off of that and it gets a whole lot easier. But that initial stage can take a couple of weeks sometimes.
I get it. I feel your pain with that even when designing a website.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Okay, no website already,
Yeah.
starting from scratch," and you're kind of fishing, right? And you know that they have an idea in their head, but it's so cloudy that they
Mhm.
can't see it to describe it to you, right? You
Yeah,
just don't know what you don't know,
exactly.
and so you try to pull that out of them,
Mhm.
like, "All right, just keep talking, like, more
Yep.
information's okay," right? So when you start with that logo and you said after you have that logo, it gets a lot easier.
Mhm.
Why is that? What happens after that point?
Because getting to that point, we have already answered all of the hard questions. We've discussed their business, who they are, where they're going, what their goals are, why they wanna do this, and we've been able to create the brand identity in general. I know who we're speaking to, who we're trying to get in front of, and then I have the colors and the fonts and all the pretty stuff. So then it makes it a whole lot easier when you're working on a business card or a flyer, a digital ad, any of those things, because you have that foundation. And then
Yeah.
it's just working on the correct messaging, or if it's a website, the content that goes on on that website, all of the messaging for that.
So I have a question for you, right? Because I want to hear your take on this, and I already think I know the answer. But so many times when I'm talking to a new business, or even a business that's been around for a long time, and we're trying to figure out who their target audience is, they don't want to narrow it down because they're afraid of narrowing it
Mhm.
down. They're like, "Well, I can serve everybody. Everybody's my client. I can't niche down." How do you handle that? What's your take on it?
That is a good question, and I'm actually doing that for myself right now, so it gets
Ooh,
even
I
better.
love that.
It's pushing me outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's asking those hard questions and really getting them to understand and believe you as a professional in this industry that you do know what you're talking about. um, Giving them examples of past clients and being able to back it up with where they started and then where we push to go with things and having that real life example there really kind of is the best.
Yeah.
um, but besides that, it's hard. It's hard. It was hard for me to make that decision. And
Really?
yeah, it's one
Why?
of those
Because I
things.
know you know this. I know that
Yes,
you know that you have to get really focused.
yes. And
Uh,
it's funny with my business, I decided to niche myself probably about 5 years ago. And I thought I niched myself. And it was a niche kind of with the branding side of things. And then as the past maybe 2 years have gone by, I realized my messaging was still kind of all over the place. I thought it was focused, but I was still talking to probably a good half dozen different audiences. And so then my message, even though it might look pretty, it
Right.
wasn't focused and it wasn't the authentic me. And trying to get all those pieces to come together, it was kind of a push down pop up type of thing I was going through. And now I'm really deep diving into who that audience is that I want to talk to, who are my ideal clients, who do I want to work with. And that doesn't mean you have to say no to people that don't fit into that niche. but
Thank you.
my message is for this new group. And
I appreciate you being so transparent because it's true. We always have to do that. And I found for myself that I had what I thought was an ideal client, but then over time, that ideal client started to change.
mhm,
And then I wanted to change it a little bit more to get closer to what who I really wanted to serve.
mhm,
So then you do reevaluate and
yes,
you come up with new messaging, and that's okay when your ideal client changes.
mhm,
That's okay. Sometimes that happens automatically. Do you see that too with your clients? You're like,
yes,
"Oh, they started here, but actually now their clients are here."
mhm.
You know?
Yep, and even if it's still the same general area, I have one client, their client base is still the same, who they're targeting is the same, but they've realized they wanna shift their message where they were promoting products and what they had to offer, and then they realized their competition is basically doing the same thing. They have the same products, same service, and so then we had to stop and think about what's actually setting them apart and
Mm,
go from there. So we're targeting their message more on the service that's provided because they go above and beyond and they have a handful of different things that they're offering with their products and going from there. So it's still the same target audience. It's just how we're massaging that message now.
I love that you just said that. What sets you apart?
Mhm.
I ask that question a lot, and I'm like a lot of times I'm like, I don't know." Like, that's the response I get is like, "I don't really know."
Mhm. And
How important is that to know when it
so
comes to your
important.
branding?
Yeah. That's we always it's called a SWOT analysis. We often like to do at the beginning, and that's your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and your threats. And when you actually list those out, then you can see what you're doing, what you're actually doing well compared to what you thought you might have been doing well. And then what your threats are, where you see your competition, where they might be encroaching on what you're doing and what you might be able to do better.
Yeah, I love SWOT analysis. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's good to do in your business all the time, just to
Mhm.
stay up on top because it does change and it's just such an easy it's just a little block and you just fill everything in
Yeah,
it and
yeah.
write it out and you
I
do
like
get a clearer vision. Go ahead.
Mhm. I like to do it probably about once a year, and
Yeah,
even with my clients, you probably find it in web design that with technology changing, on top of the business and their goals changing, you need to look at it again and see, is it time for an update? Do we need
yeah.
to change our messaging or the images that we're using? Or is it time for a complete overhaul? And just taking that time once a year or once every other year and take a deep dive, make sure you're on track for what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend that too. And I probably don't do it for myself.
Yeah. Always
I
put us on the
probably
back burner.
I know, it's terrible, but that's usually the case. So when it comes to branding, right? So we have our logo already. I'm gonna hop over to colors.
Okay.
We're picking our colors of what
Mhm.
colors go into it. Now, you know I geek out on color psychology, right?
Yes.
From a marketing I totally do. From a market because you have a degree in marketing, I have a degree in psychology. How important is the color when it comes to your brand?
Yeah, it's pretty important. Because we as humans are so visual, it's one of the first things that you see and triggers an emotion within you. Um, Even like restaurants often use red. Red kind of makes you hungry and it builds that appetite for you. You'll see the colors red on picnic blankets and whatnot. So it's those little things that have a trigger that you don't even realize is happening within yourself.
Yeah.
So that's always important. We typically look at the industry, what colors are often used for that, with their messaging, what colors signify different strengths, weaknesses, fun loving, comfort, and take all those words into consideration while we're choosing the colors for the brand.
Yeah, I do geek out on color psychology. And so many times, and this just happened not long ago. I'm talking to someone like, "Oh, I'm gonna change my all my colors on my website." And it's like, "Cool, what who are you targeting now?
Mhm.
And they explained their target, and then they picked a color, and I said, "Well, why that color?" "Well, I like it." And I'm like, it's like one of those weird things. It's like, do I say something or don't I say something, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't ask my opinion. So I'm just
You're
gonna
just
sit
scared.
here. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and not say anything. But I'm like,
S
those colors
slowly
do
sway at you.
not speak to that audience, like, at all, at all. But that happens, right? A lot of times what we do is we start this business, and the first thing that we think of is like, oh, pink and purple are my favorite colors.
Mhm.
So that's what color I want my logo to be. Or right now there's that, I call it millennial pink. I don't know what the real color is, but do you know what I mean? It's like this millennial age has this very light pink. Everything is
Oh,
light pink.
okay. Yep.
And everybody's like, I don't know what, I just call it millennial pink because I see it so
I
much on
like it.
Instagram.
Yeah, that's a fun term. I might start using it.
But I see it a lot. It's a trend. It's popular, and a lot of people are, and millennials are picking that pink.
Mhm,
Obviously, female millennials, they're picking that, and I don't think that makes them stand apart. Do I think it's
mhm,
pretty? Yes, I do. I do think it's a very pretty color, and some of them mix it with just white, or some of
mhm,
them mix it with a beige. And yeah, aesthetically, I think it's really cool.
mhm.
But I also think they blend in with everybody else.
Yes, yeah, and especially if you're in a saturated market, you need something that's going to stand out, something that's going to be memorable. When somebody sees it, they'll know, "Oh, that's you." And yes, I forgot, I need to order that product or
Right?
whatever it is.
Right. And so when we're talking about branding, now we talked about colors a little bit, right? We kind of hopped over to Instagram, or
Mm,
where
mhm,
we're seeing things. So when it comes to things like Instagram or social media content or your website,
mhm,
does branding also include a certain look that you have so that
mhm.
you stand out, like people know immediately, like Disney?
Yeah.
You don't have to actually see the name Disney to kind of know that it's Disney. You can see the font and a
Mhm.
totally different
And you
word,
know.
right? And your mind goes to
Yep.
Disney.
Yeah, it's definitely important, and that's even one of the things that I offer, some templates for your social media, so everything is just kind of a plug and play. They can just drop a photo in, but everything can be cohesive with the look, the style, the colors, the fonts, and everything's right there ready to go. And it's much easier when you have a set of 5 or 10 things that you don't have to build a whole new one each time you want to make a post.
Right.
But
Right.
that especially on Instagram where you have that wall that you can easily see all of the images right there, it's important that it is cohesive and looks fluid and pretty.
I think so too. So a lot of times people will say, "Do I need to use the same color scheme on my Instagram feed?" What if I want to just put real pictures of
Mhm.
what's happening? Like, is that okay?
I would think so. I'd probably revert back to you since you're the social media. But I love photos. I don't know if it's a modern thing, but photos can be really authentic, and as long as they're using the same lighting or filter or whatever it is, so it has a consistent theme, I would say photos by themselves are perfect.
I think so too. I do think so. And I think it depends, from my opinion, like what industry you're in.
Mhm.
If you're a photographer, then I would think then it would stay more consistent, like
Yes.
the images you're posting, because that's a competitive field and people are looking for different fields. And if you have different fields, then
Mhm.
feature them on that page in different ways so that you can see that, right?
Yep.
Whether you're creating like the bands
Yes.
and all the different types of photography you can do. But if you have a product or a service, I think people like to see the peeks behind the curtain because we're nosy by nature.
Mhm.
So we want to feel like, oh, wow, like I get to see what's really going on because I follow them on Instagram. Right. And we do this. I
Exactly.
do this with people that I look up to, and that I love their Instagram because they keep it real and they're
Yep.
showing, different
Mhm.
things that are happening. And if you don't want to mess up your Instagram, the aesthetics of it, throw it in stories,
Mhm. I
right?
agree. Yep.
Or
I
do it
do
in
that
your
with myself.
reels and take it off of your profile, right?
Yep. Yep, definitely. Yeah, the behind the scenes are so important. I love them, and I try to incorporate them where I can for myself, but I always try to push them with the clients because I know I love watching it, even if it's, somebody drawing a picture
Yeah,
or designing something. I like just watching the movement.
right. No, I get it, and you were doing that for a while too on your
Mhm.
Instagram. You were drawing and showing, which was super cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And why'd you quit that?
Time, I really do wanna get back into it. I was actually just talking about that the other day. I
Were you?
really need to start drawing more. I even have my tripod and light all ready, so I just need to actually do it.
Yeah,
But I think it because I love watching others do it so much, it feels that much more important that I do it.
yeah.
Plus, it helps drive my creativity for when I'm building those logos and other design pieces for clients.
Right. No, I get it. I get it. And that's pretty cool. I liked watching those. So when you are talking about branding, let's talk about fonts a little bit.
I love fonts.
Fonts are part of your branding, right?
Mhm. Yep. I can get lost in the world of fonts.
I know.
My husband will often walk into the room and see me scrolling. He's like, "You're still scrolling." It's like, "Well, that's not quite the right font." But
Right?
there's
It's
someone.
like they all have their own personality when
They
you see it.
do. It's much like the colors. They all have a purpose, whether you're looking for a serif font, which have the little pieces that hang off of them. Um, they look more professional, um, very old worldly,
Yeah.
but sans serif font is very smooth and clean. It's very modern, and so
That's
they
my
all have
favorite.
their
I like
purpose.
sans serifs.
So do
I
I.
don't
And and they're very easy to read. That's typically what I
Yeah.
use for copy text on websites,
Yes.
just for the readability. And then you fall into the whole, do I use upper and lowercase? Do I use all caps? All caps often looks like you're yelling, but it's good
Right.
for heading that you want it to stand out. And then you have the boldness, or if it's going to be thin, and there's so many different ways to use fonts. If it's italicized and shows movement.
Right. But different fonts can make you feel different things with different brands. Like you may
Mhm.
not use a thin sans serif for a weight, like a gym
Correct.
or a
Yeah.
box, like a
Yep.
right.
You wanna show something strong,
Right.
solid. Yep.
Right.
Even I have a lot of firewood clients, and I don't typically use the sans serif for them. They have something a little blockier, something a little more warming and comforting,
Mhm.
and yeah, they
Which
all
makes
have a different
sense.
role. It could be a good tagline. It could go under the main logo,
Right.
main font, but yeah, the main one, depending on the business, is normally something bigger and bolder.
How many different fonts should somebody have with their brand?
For brand. I typically go with 3. I have
Okay.
a heading font, an accent font that's used sparingly, and then your copy body font. Those are my
Okay.
main ones.
So what about if I'm creating a business card? Would I
I'd
use
probably
all
stick to 2.
3? 2?
Well,
Okay.
depending on how much information you're putting on there. Sometimes one of the fonts just kind of falls into the logo itself. Um, I'll use weight on business cards more often.
Okay.
Rather than selecting different fonts, I'll do a heavier, bolder font to put the name of the person or whatever main contact info you want, but then I'll use a thinner, lighter font for an address or different things like that.
I gotcha. Yeah, and even, like, on marketing materials, like brochures,
Mhm.
right? I've seen it where people have done a variety of fonts on all the different sections, and I'm like,
Yeah,
just
it's overload.
it is overload,
Your
right?
eye
'Cause
doesn't know where to look, and none of it is important anymore. So you really
right,
have to take that into consideration. The movement of the eye, where you want it to look first, and then where
right.
it's going second, and then the final third part has all the information that some people don't even read that. So you need to make sure your subheadings have enough information to get your message across without bombarding them, and if it's interesting enough, they'll read on.
I like that you just said that, right? So let's talk about some of the digital pieces that you create for your clients. so that they have that consistent brand across
Mhm,
everything, right? So what are the most important things? You were just saying, like, you want people to know what you do, what it's about, right?
mhm,
At first glance. How do you do that?
yeah. I think with a website or even a flyer, that heading piece is the most important. That has the title that gives you the general broad message of the piece. So that'll be the biggest, heaviest font. Then it would move into a subheading that is slightly smaller, gives a little more detail about it. And for something like a flyer or website, it can break into the separate sections. And
Yeah.
then you can use that same subheading font. Don't switch it up. Just keep it the same. You might change the color, but
Yeah.
and then yeah, the copy, it just goes into more detail. Or on a website, the copy can still be brief, but link it to a sub page that'll give them more information should they want more information. And
Yeah.
there's different ways to tie it all together.
There yes, there really is. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, some branding horror stories. Can you think of one? I am kind of putting you on the spot, right? Have you ever, like, had somebody.
I have had people that come to me knowing they want a brand and they don't know what they want. And some of them turn out well. But
Okay.
I have had a couple where they don't know what they want. We discuss it. I put things together, and none of the concepts are what they want, but they still don't know what they like. They don't like anything that I put together.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
then,
I mean, that happens.
yeah, there's a lot of back and forth on those of me trying to ask more questions to figure out where we're going, what message did I miss? And those projects, I'll tell them it's going to take 2 weeks and it turns into like a 6-month project just to get off the ground. Um,
Yes.
and then a lot of those, however, they're very thankful that I took the time to figure
Right.
this out, but they do come back for additional pieces. Um, I have had some that they're just frustrated, and uh, I think they're more frustrated with their business.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
trying to put the brand together is just like
Mm,
one more piece that they feel like they don't have the time for.
yeah.
And it just becomes, they become inundated with everything that's going on. And so I try not to take it personally when this happens sometime, and try to look at the bigger picture and see where I can help.
Yeah.
But then I reach back out and let them know I'm here if they want anything
Yeah,
additional.
in all fairness to them, I can understand that because when I went through my rebrand
Mhm,
and I took the brand of what the business used to be called, and I was completely changing the name, the look,
mhm,
every aspect of it. Not only was it overwhelming to think of everything I needed to change, right? And not just the website or the logo, but like on the back end, all the
mhm.
things, things with IRS and paperwork and
Yes.
all that stuff that you need to change. But it is so scary to make a
Mhm.
move like that.
Yes.
So I can understand where maybe, when you're talking to somebody and that I don't like, I don't know.
Yes, they just have so much going on, and like you were saying, as I'm doing my rebrand right now, I'm in the middle of the process. I'm starting to figure out different ways and different methods of what I'm going to do for future clients based off of the process that I've done for myself and all of the information that I've gathered. And even when I think I have enough information to move forward, I'm like, oh, wait, I still have this question, and throw that in
Yeah.
there, do a little more research. And yeah, it's a process, even when
So
you do it for a living.
right. No, I agree. It is a process. So my question then is, as in somebody who is trying to get or needs a brand, what is something that they typically aren't thinking about to tell you?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I
um,
stumped you.
yes,
I stumped you.
because they often come at me with general ideas, um, it might be I have run into quite a few clients where they don't know they know, like, their general audience, but they don't want to delve deeper, or they haven't delved deeper yet. And so
Yeah.
it's that next step that normally releases the most information for me. And so
Okay.
I'll get very high level information, and that can often cause confusion or that cloudiness as I'm in the design process, to where there could be some miscommunication between what they're saying and what I'm thinking, because we didn't go a step deeper. And that could really
Interesting.
range on.
Interesting. How do you know? Like, do you just figure out, like, you should have gone deeper when you're in
Yeah.
the moment? Or, like, do you sometimes get
Sometimes,
off a call and
especially
you're
in the
like,
beginning.
I didn't go deep enough"?
Yeah. Especially in the beginning, I would have my consultation over the phone, and everybody's happy and cheerful and everything's great, and then I hang up the phone, and when I look at the computer, I'm like, "Well, where do I wanna start?" And so
Yeah,
I think over the past couple of years, I have gotten better at asking those questions so it doesn't happen as much, um, but just figuring out what they want it to look and feel like, I think, is the
right.
biggest part. And and trying to get people, they often see something that they like and they want to replicate it. And trying to tell them that, well, we don't want to just copy it. We can
Right.
use it as inspiration. And I've had clients want to get very similar names to other companies or other clients that I've had, and trying to talk them down from that. Like, you need something to stand apart. I
Yeah.
know that person's doing really well, but
Right.
you don't want to be them.
You don't want that same logo. You don't
Yeah.
want that same look, like, look different. So, I have a question because Canva has become a very popular tool when it comes to
Mhm.
graphics and images that we use on our Instagram
Yep.
or website. They also offer logos. What are
Oh,
your thoughts? Oh, you didn't know that? You
no, I
could
didn't.
okay, they have a section, go in there, okay? So, I may be, like, throwing you off right here, but my question was, what do you think about the logos
Mhm.
through Canva?
Yeah, I'll have to look at them. I know there's other companies that do similar things. Um, I think it's good for people on a budget, just starting out and that don't know what they want. Um, but once you get to that next level where you want something custom, you want to stand out, that's when you should seek a designer or professional to get down to the nitty gritty and figure out what would make you stand apart, but still represent your business and what you're going for. Um, some of the pre-made logos that I've seen, they're decent,
Yeah,
but a lot of them start looking alike. So I think that's where you don't really stand apart, even though it'll you can customize it with your name. It's still not. I've seen some where there's like six different logos, slightly different from each other, but pretty much the same.
I've
And
seen
that's
that
kind of what I
too.
picture. But I'll have to go check out Canvas and see what they're offering.
Yeah, well, they don't design it for you, they just have their templates, right?
Okay. Mhm. Yeah.
And I agree because sometimes I see the similar I think it's one logo, but I'm like, "Oh, that's somebody different," but I know
Yes.
I've seen it on Canva,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh," like, I understand because trust me, I was there. I was there
Mhm.
when I'm like, "Hey, I can't afford to hire somebody to make a logo for me when I first started off,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah.
let me try to create something,"
Mhm.
and I don't I wish I had a copy. I might be able to find a digital file, whatever it was I created, but it was definitely bad. Definitely
Yeah.
like really, really bad, right? But if you have the money, I mean, invest in it. And it's not
Mhm. It's
super
not that.
expensive to at least
Yeah.
get that logo. I think that's the
Mhm.
first piece of your brand,
I
the
agree.
most important. But do you
Yeah.
agree or no?
I agree. Yep. And like you were saying, I think I'm actually pretty affordable. I know, so if you go to a big agency, yes, it can be astronomical, and that's not good for somebody that's just starting out. That's good for a
Right.
corporation. But if you find somebody that's freelancing or a smaller business, uh, typically it's fairly affordable. It's not what you might be fearing. And even if you just reach out to get a price, it can't hurt.
Right.
Um,
Right.
And then I'm not sure what all you get with the other packages, but if you go with a professional, you can get everything customized. You can get every type of file format you want, different sizes. You can just the icons can put a full logo or different colors. And so there's a lot more that's offered when you do it that way.
And I was gonna ask you that next, lead into that, because a lot of times I work with somebody and they're like, "Oh, I have a logo," and then I get like a JPEG that's been reproduced several times, right?
Yeah,
Like a screenshot, downloaded the screenshot. I'm like, "Please, like,
not gonna work.
yes, right?" I'm like, "Can you just" and I already know, but I'm like, because I've asked too, "Did you have a graphic designer design your logo?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah." I'm like, "Can you ask for those original files, or do
Mhm.
you have the folder they sent you?" They're like, "Well, this is all I got." Okay, so let's just talk about this. So everybody listen to this.
Yes.
When you are hiring a graphic designer to design something that is important for your business, like your logo, that could be on anything from a website to a business card to a billboard to a car
Mhm.
wrap, right? Like
Needs to
what
be scalable.
yes, what files should you have? And when you answer that, can you explain what the difference is between those files so that somebody who maybe did work with a designer and has a folder of all these different files are like, I don't know what this means. I'm
Mhm.
just always using a PNG.
Yeah.
Can you just
Yep.
explain what they are?
Yep. Normally, I give everybody a JPEG, a PNG, a PDF, and the EPS, the art file. And the difference, a JPEG is just a photo. There's no transparent background to it. It is what it is. But you can use that on any social media or any place that you can upload a photo to. A PNG is one of my favorites because you can have the transparent background. And that's so important when you have a colored background or you have an image lying behind it, especially for your website, any flyers, business card, anything typically has some sort of colored background or photo, something behind it. Even social media, I've used PNGs a lot on there. Um, and the file sizes are still small enough. The PDF and the art file, the UPS file, or it could be a .ai for Illustrator, those are vector files, and those are your scalable files. Normally, if you're going to a printer for anything larger scale, they'll want that art file, the EPS or the .ai files, just because they can extract it. It'll have different layers to it. They can resize it without losing any resolution to it. And that's really important if you have like a trade show booth or a billboard or a poster or anything like that. They want the vector.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that because a lot of times, honestly, I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, do you
I run
have
into it all
this?
the time.
Yeah, and people don't honestly know, right?
Mhm.
Because I didn't know in the beginning when
Yep.
I first got files, and I'm like, I don't even know what these are for. Which one should I be using? Because I couldn't even open the EPS, right? And I think
Mhm.
the first files that I ever got on my very first business was they were AI
Mhm.
files, right?
Yep.
Now I'm confusing like with artificial intelligence now. I'm like, wait, was that right? That sounds right, but I don't know if that was right. But but they were AI files and I try opening it and they don't
Mhm.
even open. So I'm like, are these bad? Like, I didn't
Yep.
know. I
I
didn't
always
under
get that email from clients
Do
saying, "I
you
can't
really?
open these files." I'm like, "You won't be able to." So now sometimes I'll even throw it in the email when I send them all the files. "You won't be able to open this unless you have the design software, but these files you can use."
Right. And that's why it's so important to have just keep all those files of
Mhm.
your logo
Yep.
because you just don't know. Like you said, there's a certain one that if you're getting baseball caps made,
Mhm.
they're not going to want a JPEG to do your baseball cap. They're
Correct.
going to
Yep.
require something different. And they will tell you, like,
Yes.
they will say, this is the type of file you need to upload, or this is the type of file we need to get
Exactly.
this
Yep.
done. So,
And they'll probably even give you the dimensions of what they need or the DPI, the dots per inch, so they can reproduce it.
yes, thank you. So, if you're working with a graphic designer, switch to Melissa. No, I'm kidding. You can.
Thanks.
She's awesome. She is awesome. But make sure you get these files from them because I can't tell you how many times I've reached out to somebody and they're like, well, this is all that I got.
Mhm.
And you should
Trying
have
to
got
either clean up
more.
the background for them or
Yeah, you should have got
redesign
more.
it.
This is gonna be your logo and this is going to be your business brand, and
Yes.
you're gonna plaster this everywhere.
Yeah.
Make sure you get it. Now,
Yeah.
what if somebody did not get it? Maybe someone's like, "You know what? Somebody did create my logo. I do kinda like it. I
Mhm.
don't wanna change it because I've used it for so long, but I don't have any of those files." Can you recreate that?
I can, for the most part. If it's super detailed, it might take more time, and so then the cost would differ based off of how much detail is in it, but for the most part, I haven't run into one yet that I haven't been able to recreate.
Awesome. Well, that's
And
good to know. So if
yeah,
you are that person, you can recreate them and get all the files that you need. You're not completely
yeah.
at a loss.
Yeah, and I wanna throw in that it's also super important to have the correct files because you don't want a blurry logo. If it's representing your business, you wanna look as professional as possible, so you don't want something blurry or unlegible illegible.
Right. And my opinion honestly is if you are making the decision to start a business, if maybe you have a side hustle, but if you when you are ready to take it seriously, I say invest in it. I
Mhm.
mean, uh, find a way to invest.
Yeah,
If you don't have the money right now and you're like, "Oh, I know," but make it a priority. Put
mhm,
so much aside and use it as one of your part of your business expenses to get
yeah,
this done because it's a game changer. When you invest in your business and you get a solid brand, everything changes.
mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of the companies or people often offer packages. So if you are on a budget, you might be able to get something that gives you the logo plus a couple of marketing pieces at a discounted rate because you're getting all of it at once. And so that often helps as well. And you could spend just a couple $100s and still have a decent package of pieces to get you started.
Yeah, that's not much when you start a business. I mean, a lot less
Mhm.
than when
Yeah.
not that much overhead there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that maybe I didn't ask that you wanna share about, creating a brand?
Yeah, I don't think so. I do think it's really important to have those professional pieces. It just sets you apart. I've had clients where they have the flyers or magnets or labels, and it sets them apart when they have a customer in the field that asks them for something, they're able to give them a physical piece or send them to a QR code to check out their digital landing page or whatnot. It just gives them a little more information and it makes them more credible that they are a real legit business. Um, on top of just having a Facebook page, which
Right, preach.
everybody seems to think that's a website, but it's not.
Yeah,
um, but just it makes you look more professional, and then people believe that you're a real business, which is what you're ultimately trying to do.
right.
And they're more likely to come back just because you have that. So
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
highly believe in branding and marketing and yeah, set
I
yourself
do too.
apart.
I do too. I do too. Anyhow, Melissa, thank you so much for joining in today and sharing all your information about branding. All of Melissa's information are in the notes. So if you are looking for a designer or somebody to help you with your brand, definitely reach out to Melissa. She did my logo for Carbon Silk, and I absolutely love it. So I highly recommend her. She's done things for some of my clients as well. So, Melissa, thank you so much for joining in.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, guys, we'll see ya.
Bye.